Add-on content has always been a point of contention in the video game industry, but the concept of paying more for additional content in a game you enjoy shouldn't cause a stir. The problem stems from an industry populated with publishers, developers, and gamers, each with their own desires for those three infamous letters, DLC. In recent years, microtransactions called loot boxes and their implementation into everything from single-player epics to competitive shooters have escalated a heated conversation into a full-on war between the people who play games and the people who make them. Microtransactions are no longer an occasional annoyance sprinkled into free-to-play titles. They've become embedded into every genre and aspect of AAA gaming, morphing appealing and creative experiences into a dumping ground for greedy business practices. Today, I ask you to level with me as we ponder the question, are microtransactions ever okay? If you're too young to remember it, most gamers at least know of the Golden Horse Armor DLC for the Elder Scrolls IV Oblivion. It reached internet infamy not only for looking downright stupid, but for Bethesda thinking the ludicrous asking price of $2.50 for an armor in an offline single-player game was at all reasonable. The thing is, in 2018, that horse armor wouldn't even be something to blink at. Today there are micro DLC for character skins, character shaders, gloves, gun camos, voice packs, XP and credit boosts, perks, emblems, extra creative class slots, wheels, weapons, weapon variants, and even extra slots for your variants. Like seriously? What the f***? What the actual f*** is this bullshit? What boardroom f*** thought this was okay to do? F***. The point is, the AAA gaming industry as a whole has abandoned balance and morality in favor of capital. The rise in microtransactions and more specifically random chance-based loot boxes have created a culture that encourages emptying your pockets instead of demonstrating skill. Where we used to have to complete challenges to unlock new guns or character skins, we now have to pony up real money, hope for an RNG miracle, or play until our eyes bleed. But why are so many gamers willing to do this? If you took a psychology class at any point in high school, you'll probably recognize the name Pavlov. Ivan Pavlov is best known for his experiments demonstrating classical conditioning. You know, the dogs, the saliva, and the little bell? Essentially, Pavlov demonstrated that a neutral stimulus by itself will not produce a response. But when a neutral stimulus and an unconditioned stimulus are presented together, eventually, by association, the neutral stimulus will also bring about the involuntary response that the unconditioned stimulus generates. Translate this into the world of video games, and you have RNG Loot, a system designed to present rewards at random intervals and manipulate the player into playing more. This is why Borderlands and Diablo 3 are so addictive, and why grinding out the same boss over and over will seem all the more worth it, even if you had to play it 40 times over for that particular weapon. Activision, the publisher responsible for some of the most egregious methods of manipulation, has hired behavioral psychologists to maximize profits from microtransactions, and has even patented a matchmaking system that would pair players together to encourage microtransaction purchases. The industry is so far over the edge that a developer announcing a lack of microtransactions in their upcoming game is now front-page news. It's now a rarity to not have forced, game-altering purchases available in a AAA game. Where we used to have overpriced camo and emblem packs as standalone purchases in Call of Duty, the latest installments now have entire weapons only available through supply drops. Where Forza Motorsport used to let you buy credit boosts and new cars outright, Forza 7 now forces you to spend in-game and real-world money to purchase prize crates for a chance at these items. Where Rocket League, an indie game that grew into a heavy hitter, had DLC packs with guaranteed wheels and alternate cars, you can now only hope to get these items randomly through supply drops. Microtransactions for cosmetic items were bad enough, but in 2018, game-altering additions are locked behind a paywall with no guarantee of the content that you want. These games are no longer first-person shooters, racing simulators, or a wacky game of soccer with cars. These are casinos marketed to the most vulnerable among us. And as much as the ESA, an organization funded by the very stakeholders who depend on these loot boxes for profits, say that loot boxes aren't a form of gambling, they demonstrate the same psychological effects as traditional slot machines. The difference here, they're not just being sold to adults, but children as well. The existence of loot boxes in this gray area of the law hasn't escaped international attention either. Last year, Belgium's gambling committee determined that loot boxes are in fact gambling. Hawaiian State Representative Chris Lee characterized loot boxes like those initially found in Star Wars Battlefront 2 as predatory gambling. And while I highly doubt the United States federal government will take any action to protect its citizens from these predatory practices in the near future, I believe they will eventually follow the rest of the world's lead, as lawmakers are slowly being alerted to this disguised form of unrestricted gambling. But what about cosmetic-only crates like those in Overwatch? They don't directly affect gameplay, so what's the problem? The problem resonates from the fact that they implement the same psychological manipulation crates with new guns and upgrades included in them have. If the consumer desires the item, in Overwatch's case skins for characters, then the manipulation is still present, whether the item truly affects gameplay or not. No competitive game, and especially no hero shooter, should have microtransactions or tiered membership that locks various characters behind paywalls. Rainbow Six Siege. But even if the microtransactions are cosmetic only, their implementation through a loot crate or slot machine style is never okay. I fully recognize the increased cost of game development. As technology evolves, costs rise. No one is saying that publishers, developers, and marketing teams don't have a right to make a profit. But if you have to include loot boxes in your game in order to do so, you shouldn't be making games. For every AAA publisher crying wolf about increased development costs, you need to reanalyze both profit expectations and the portion of your budget spent on marketing. Millions could be saved from not publishing 17 trailers, pushing 30-second TV spots during major sporting events, and simply relying more on word of mouth and open betas than spending as much on marketing as you spent making the entire game. I'm not claiming to know every struggle developers go through. I have sympathy for developers simply trying to make the game the best it can be under the rule of corporate overlords. But I do not have sympathy for the Activisions, the Ubisofts, the Electronic Arts, and every other publisher that wants to call millions of copies sold a disappointment. Stop expecting every game to become the next Call of Duty, and stop using microtransactions to make up for the hole you dug yourselves with a multi-million-dollar marketing budget. So when are microtransactions okay? As much as I long for the days where microtransactions didn't exist, any realist can recognize that they are here to stay. Much like how DLC has evolved over time, microtransactions will adjust to trends and consumer desires as well. Cosmetic-only micro DLC, when accompanied by the ability to purchase it outright and not through a random RNG system, is acceptable. There should be no gambling aspect to a consumer's purchase, period. Micro DLC purchases should offer consistent value. If a camo pack in Call of Duty is $4.99 and includes a calling card, 3 weapon sights, and a gun skin at launch, all subsequent camo packs should include the same amount of items for the same price. You can't start charging $4 in November and then $7 by April. Free-to-play games also sit on unique ground. The mobile gaming market is full of puzzle and tower defense games with microtransactions designed to prey on your 5-year-old cousin with access to the family iPad and mom's Apple account. Relying on so-called whales is not a suitable business strategy either. There's a reason most hardcore gamers have stayed away from the mobile market indefinitely. You're treated like a piece of meat with a wallet and nothing more. But the AAA gaming space on consoles and PC have been treading into this dangerous territory. If the gaming industry was ever to see another collapse, it will come from traditional gaming market, free-to-play or otherwise, continuing down a path that prioritizes squeezing every nickel from their user base over making a game that is fun and engaging to play. I have uninstalled and sold games I love because I couldn't take the intrusive microtransaction systems anymore. Games I was extremely intrigued by have remained on store shelves because their publisher has had a terrible history with micro DLC. I'm not alone on this, and recent releases like Star Wars Battlefront 2 are proof that outcry over these practices can bring about change. Let me be clear though, death threats and harassment of developers or publishers is never okay. Despite what you may believe, there are actual human beings on the other end of your messages, and although you may not be happy with their actions, no one needs to worry about their safety over a video game. But formal complaints through forums, tweets, and in developer Q&As can get through to those making the games we love to play. And even if your love for a product trumps your distaste for publisher intrusion, remember that you don't have to choose one side or the other. Being critical of the games you love for their monetization practices or otherwise doesn't diminish your potential enjoyment of them. But that's just my thoughts on microtransactions. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. If you enjoyed the video, please leave us a like, as it does help us out. Subscribe for future episodes, and follow us on Twitter for the latest updates on when new episodes of Level With Me release, and see if I'll ever get out of plat on Overwatch. Until next time, thank you for watching. Ah! 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 Oh, Ah! I don't know.